Welcome, my friends. Welcome, Share Squad. Gather around the campfire or light some candles and turn off the lights. Make yourself comfortable because it is time to share the scare with Lady Shar. I am Lady Shar and thank you for coming to my channel. Welcome, my special guest, Shannon from the Real McCoy Reacts. Welcome, Shannon. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight. Let's have this discussion. I think it's needed discussion too to talk about this kind of stuff. Especially a few years. This has been in my life for a long time, almost 30 years. But, this is the Real McCoy Reaction, and some people call me Matt, some people call me McCoy. I can be located at the Real McCoy Reaction TV channel. Also, same name, same channel on Instagram and on Facebook. It's Understanding McCoy, all three places. But I'm right now coming across the air deep in the state of Kentucky. All right, let's go.
Okay. Today we are talking about Bob Lazar. It's been 30 years, a little bit over 30 years, and I am not sure that it started recording.
All the way back. I was just a sophomore in high school whenever that came out.
See, I'm not really familiar with Bob Lazar. I really didn't know his story until recently when this stuff has come out on the news about UFOs.
Well, I knew it right off the bat. It was really weird for me in high school. I don't know. As a young kid, I've always been interested in really conspiracy theories. So I was always questioning my teachers, giving questions that they didn't want to answer. Same thing with my teachers. When it came around on my senior term paper, they gave us subjects we were allowed to do. I went off those subjects and I did my term paper on the proving of UFOs, which my teacher at the beginning didn't like, but at the end of it, she loved it. That gives me an A on it. So, but I was introduced to Bob Lazar back then. Growing up, I listened to Coast AM from like the mid '90s on. And this story has been talked about so many times. And what's crazy on Coast to Coast, the majority of the people that came on there were like investigators. 10% of them was people that were on his side and believed what he was talking about. But like you're going to talk about today, a lot of them were debunkers, trying to find every way possible, put holes in the story to try to make you look like a fool, and to try to debunk the whole entire thing. So basically what it's all about. It came out with some information that was mind-boggling at the time. Well, pretty much still is today, but in today's world, patents and things have came out to kind of prove what he said true.
Yeah, let's talk about a few of those things. So he said that the fuel for this. Well, wait. Let's back up a second. Let's let the listeners know a little bit of something about the story because they may not know. They may be like me and have heard the name but didn't really know the story. So.
Sure. Well, you fill us in, and if you need any help or anything along the way, just ask me, and we'll go from there.
So, according to Bob Lazar, in 1982, he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos Lab, and he built a jet car, put a jet engine in a car.
Yeah, multiple jet cars. It was his hobby. It was the thing that he did on the side. And what was crazy about jet cars, with me growing up in the 70s and 80s, that was a popular, phenomenal, and sad. I mean, if you went to a drag races just anywhere in that country, there was usually some star that would show up there with some kind of a jet car. So that was one of the popular things back then. Yeah,
Okay, so everyone in town knew this jet car because it was loud, and the newspaper decided to do a story on it. So in the newspaper, it shows Bob with his car, and it says Los Alamos lab physicist Bob Lazar,
Yep.
and talks about the car and stuff. So that shows.
And, that's a lot. That's a lot of proof of where we're working. And you really both know that the government wanted to try to erase you and make it want to give valid, make your statements valid. They could easily erase your name and make these bigger institutions erase you off of paperwork. That's just that's not out of the question. This has been done to multiple people multiple times, but that's one of the worst debunking things I think out there is trying to prove that he didn't go to school anywhere, which is ridiculous. I mean, how can you have a rocket car and have an interview and have I think also somebody in the show on Netflix they also found a phone book from that company and his name was in the phone book. So there's multiple things that prove he was really.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That after he came out, depending on your point of view as a whistleblower or a conspiracy theorist, his work records from Los Alamos lab disappeared.
Yep.
But there was that one newspaper article, and he went to Los Alamos lab with George Knapp. They walked in. The security person knew who he was. He just walked in the door, walked around, said hi to people. It kind of proved to me that he worked there. Plus, what you brought up was an employee phone book.
Yep, I mean,
you don't.
There's so many. Go ahead.
You don't put the janitor service, I think is what they tried to claim, that he worked there as a janitor after they found the phone registry for the company. You don't put the janitor service in the directory. That's usually contracted out. For a place like that, the people working there don't do the cleaning. You know what I mean? They don't have a janitor on staff. That's what I'm saying.
And throughout the last 10 or 15 years, again, professional people, you can tell, are being paid for by high dollar, high individuals will come up with a new little piece of that story to try to debunk it in some other way. They didn't have no valid proof to prove what they were saying other than they were just making things up. And that's the problem with a lot of it from both sides. It's hard to prove this either way. I will say this. From the very beginning, day one, when he came out and said it, the interview in his young version self, you could tell he had seen something and witnessed something because of what he said and the way he said it. And the way he was talking about it because he thought the whole world needed it because it could change the world. And if, anti-gravity exists, if that technology really exists, it would change the world. It would be basically equivalent to like 3 type of energy. And it would change the balance of powers, the states of reality. It would change everything. So, that's his whole reasoning for saying it. And then all these debunkers that want to debunk little specific things like his education, his stories, this and that and that. All this time for all these years, in today's world, we're finding out that element 115 really does exist. There's multiple patents for gravity machines, everything he talked about. There's patents that show this stuff exists. And I think that the nail in the coffin of it all is the scanners, the type of scanners he was trying to describe in the 80s and 90s, the bone scanners, the scanners you put your hands on that read your electromagnetic field of your bones, and how he tried to describe them. And everybody said that's how you prove he's making all this stuff up. That doesn't exist.
Okay.
Well,
hold on just a second. I'm going to pause so I can bring up some pictures of what we're talking about.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right, and these scanners, and I think you pulled up a picture there for people to look at. But these scares, saw these before we, and any kind of technology, any of them, anything like this ever existed. And in that show on Netflix, I guess or the Navy or somebody information and released these photos of the devices that were in these spaces, and that's exactly what he was talking about, which I think is a valid point that means you got to lean more to him telling the truth than him trying to make stuff up. But
So
go ahead.
if you find out one part of the story is false, do you throw the baby out with the bathwater, or do you take the different parts of the story, and if the majority of them, I mean, what is your criteria for believing in something? Is it just whether you feel it, or?
I think that's a great question, and I look at it like this. I look at it through a common sense lens. When you release that information, right off the bat, I thought, my God, this is fanciful, this is unbelievable. But then again, it's amazing. Some of this might be true, some of this might be false. And as I've gotten older, what you got to understand about anybody that talks about this information, they all have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to work in any of their jobs. They're all told, there's a certain amount of things you can say and there's a certain amount of things you can't say. So based off of that and based off of common sense of what we know now and what we found out true, I would say 95 to 99% of what he's saying is exactly the truth. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but on the show, George Knapp put into 4 different lie detector tests from 4 different experts. I guess in Las Vegas or whatever, the news company put him under 4 different top-notch lie detector tests. He passed every single one of them where he's not lying.
Yes, sir.
What he knows, what he's saying, listen. Maybe the government back then invested people and took them into places and told them things and released them out to the public. And, they're under their knowledge, under Bob knowledge, he didn't know that he was him in any way whatsoever. And everything he's saying, he feels is completely true. But there's parts of this that probably, not only is it the truth, it's just part of the truth and not really the whole truth. And we're not getting to see the rest of it. And that's a problem with what all these debunkers do. They get to talking about where he's from, his knowledge, his education, but not the truth about this is equipment from another place. Two of these people, the intelligence are those are questions you know I'm talking about. But these debunkers throw all this other stuff in to make us not even think about that and just talk about these individual points. But I think everybody has to make that own decision on their own, through their own research on their own path in life and completely live on it and things they believe in. I think I think this is a great point here with this. I think what he originally said is people like me were fascinated and excited and also scared. And I think when you're scared, when you hear something new that goes beyond your belief and scares you a little bit, it's a lot easier not to believe it or debunk it or just to write it off because it goes, it's so far outside of what you know is normal.
Right. I usually approach kind of like I'm on a jury, like eyewitnesses accounts. I can watch those and, give credit to those. That's the biggest thing these debunky monkeys do is say, oh, only one person saw it, Well, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Hold on, I gotta pause a second. My husband's calling me. Sorry about that interruption, folks. My husband called and knocked Shannon off the call.
You know what? It's impossible to.
Hello? Shannon? Hey, Shannon. Welcome back. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's those technical gremlins every time. So we were talking about Area 51. He was one of the first people that publicly said it existed and publicly said what they were doing there, and that was reverse engineering craft. And like you said, in the late 80s and 90s, they had multiple crafts that were reverse engineering the technology, and they had multiple groups working on it. And something else that he disclosed was how he got the job there, which is through that ECG company, which hired people and flew people and bus people into there from there. Later on, like now, you know, from that show, the person that he talked to that was ahead of all that, he did, and you know, he wouldn't go on record, but he said he knew him, he did work there, and that is how people got there. So you know a lot of the insights of all that, and it's hard for somebody just to make that up. I don't care what anybody says, you know. It can be really, really smart just to make all that stuff up.
Right. So far we have the hand scanner that he described, and it was not only proven that it exists, but that it was in use at Area 51 and Area 52 at the time.
Yep.
Then the jet car, while he was working at Los Alamos, led to him meeting I can't remember the guy's name, who was reading the newspaper. And that's how he ended up getting the job at S4, because he introduced himself to the physicist that was reading that newspaper and talked to him. And when he moved to Las Vegas and he was sending out his resumes, he sent one to that gentleman. That's how he got his recommendation to work there.
And that's where that, sorry, that's where that ECG company comes from. That was the company that hired him. That was like the front company that was acting like a laboratory that was actually hiring people on it. He didn't get in working. Because even the hiring system, but again, if you're somebody making that stuff up, how would you know that either? You know, the big thing I always look at the
Well,
workers and go ahead.
I wanted to touch on one more thing about what you said about Area 51. It's a common phrase now. Everyone knows Area 51. But at that time, you couldn't even confirm that Area 51 existed, because George Knapp tried, and the government denied Area 51 and denied S4, and everyone who came forward to do an interview with George Knapp after, and this would be in 1989 when Bob Lazar came forward, they would say yes, they would do the interview, and the next day they would say, no, I can't talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, they drug him out for a long time. They had lawsuits going on. There was some like employee lawsuits that really brought it to the forefront in the 90s, and I guess they forced the disclosure later on because I guess the employees that was there said they were exposed to toxic chemicals or things and was getting sick, and because the government was denying that the base even existed, these people were like being thrown in the limbo land and not getting any medical care and any of that kind of stuff. So that was another unseen reason why I was offered this force, and that's kind of crazy if you think about it. And, they were working with high energy top secret black projects no matter what anybody says. They wouldn't have kept it so secret, for such a long time otherwise. And, and another grand scheme of things, to think about what Bob Lazar said, they found these ships and they reverse engineering. He was calling reverse engineering. So reverse engineering the technology whenever he left. Well, imagine that went on for a few more years. Imagine they got the gravity engine perfected and started building them underground. I mean, I just want to, expand. I want to expand everybody's mind here just a little bit. Because in the 90s is when all our normal technology we're using in cars, phones, everything starts blowing up. And it's almost like the reverse engineering of that technology gave everybody in the world two different kinds of technology. One, they released to the public, and that's the stuff we're living on today, all the integrated fixed fiber optics and all this computer stuff. And the second part of it, which was probably So now in today's world, when we see UFOs, sorry about my voice, there's one of three places they're coming from. The government has way out in space or maybe interdimensional. And that's another thing we can talk about before we're done with this.
Yeah, I think that we might take the theories and make a second part 2.
So out of it, that'd be really, really cool.
Because there's so much to cover just in Bob's story and what has happened in technology since he came out in '89.
Yeah, and the next thing we can probably talk about, but I don't know if you've got a photo to bring up for this or not, would be talking about the element 115 and what he said about element 115. I think there's a real interesting fact there to talk about.
At the time, there was no element 115 on the periodic table. It has now since been created in a lab, only in an unstable form, and is now on our periodic table. So,
but just like in that show, the guy went and called all the best elements physicists in the world, right everywhere, and they all agree a stable form of this element really probably can be made and eventually will be synthesized and made. So all the smart people in the world all agree there will eventually be a stable form. So go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Okay, then, recently in the news, there have been some government verified UFOs or UAPs if you're in the military, which changing the name is just a way to keep people from finding stuff in the Freedom of Information Act.
Exactly right. Just like they do the UFOs, the underwater ones are different names than the UFOs, and the underwater ones too.
And then there's trans medium phenomenon or something like that for ones that are in the air and in the water and possibly in space. But there's just,
and I think
that's going down a theory road, so I want to get back to some more things that Bob has said.
Yeah, well, this goes back to the element 115. And where Bob Lazar might not be telling the truth, or he might have to say it the way he knows it, just to talk about element 115. But when in the documentary, in his older version, he said element 115, once it's put together, basically creates its own gravity. And that's how these machines work. This element created its own gravity. They put that into a reactor that amplifies that, and they put that through amplifiers that went around the ship and then basically rode a gravity wave. Which, in today's physics and terms, when you start talking about gravity waves, you're also
hold on a second,
time travel.
Shannon. Before we go on to time travel, let me no, I don't want to do that.
About the element 115.
Okay, Shannon, I've got up on the screen a U.S. patent that was filed on March 22nd, 2018. And this is for a plasma compression fusion device.
Wow, yeah, that's really, really cool. Another piece of the puzzle another piece of these puzzles that just keep on coming 30 years down the road.
Okay, you know how Bob said that underneath the part with the chairs and stuff, there was an underneath part, and he described them as barrels hanging from a big pipe, and they could be moved. This looks like that drawing, except that instead of barrels, they're kind of pointed at the end. Yeah, and they're all swung in, but it shows that they can be swung because there's little arrows.
Right. And he also he also said that they would move and they could move in 180 degrees different directions, which is, which aims the force wherever the force needs to be aimed. So, I mean, he was right on talking about all that. The element 115 that he talked about, look, if he even said it today, it's almost impossible to currently make this on this list, which I thought was a really critical thing he said in the show on Netflix. It's almost is like he's saying it is an interdimensional element. And think about that. Maybe there's elements that are only able to be formed in our reality right here, and maybe there's interdimensional elements that can be made in another dimension, like what CERN might be being used for, the Hadron Collider over in Switzerland, might be a machine that they developed to help them try to make element 115, because CERN basically, when it's on, is going and delving into other dimensions, which is basically what we talked about over there. But anyway,
well, let me tell you what I think has happened here, Shannon. Since this is a plasma compression fusion device, recently, while I was doing this stuff, I saw an article where scientists have broken the light barrier. They have made something travel faster than the speed of light. You know what they used to do it? Hot plasma. Hot plasma. You can travel stuff faster than the speed of light through hot plasma. Somehow. That's crazy to me. But anyway.
Well, the thing about that, one thing I was talking about where I thought Bob was on, it might be misleading and it might not be on purpose, is where he's strongly saying that it's alien technology coming from aliens. And when you get to that element 115, they talk it creates its own gravity. You're also talking about something in other terms that, for instance, can control time or mess with time or can go in and out of dimensions. And that's not what he's saying. So, example, if he signed a non-disclosure form saying, well, you can release tests and this and this, you have to say it's coming from aliens. If you say it's coming from us, from the future, we're going to wipe you out. I mean, but that is a possibility. This technology could actually be coming from our future, from us, from the future, or it could be coming from the interdimensional travel. This stuff could be coming from other directions. And that's the kind of stuff they don't want nobody talking about. They only want people specifically talking about, the patents, the bunkers and the story. The grander scheme of things is, imagine this. This is where, your show's titled, scary and fun things to talk about. The scary thing is, what if this is us from the future that came back, and instead of us, taking the message the right way, we decided to figure out how to rearrange that equipment, have that equipment now. I mean, there's other stories in Area 51 where, I forget the guy's name, there's a book devoted to this, where an insectoid type of an alien worked with them and helped some of the people there reverse engineering. And one of the people that came out about this story said that he was an alien. He was from our future. So there's a lot of different weird things that come from Area 51. And when you're talking about high energy and gravity waves, think about it. Earth creates gravity, Sun creates gravity. Anytime you can create an element that creates gravity, you're talking about, amazing technology.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of gravity, when Bob came out with this story, he was describing the way it worked, and he said gravity is a wave going around the craft and being able. That's what allows it to. It's actually, there's actually a theory for this in the scientific community called the bubble theory. So
that's exactly right.
And he described it perfectly back in the 80s when he was talking about the way this craft moves. So now
It's
there's,
also like it's also the time of the warp drive bubble theory, something they've got out now called warp drive, which is always on different scientific, shows like Star Trek, but they're actually saying a warp drive could exist and they can make it and it will ride
yeah,
a
because
wave
bubble
and
theory,
bubble in a wave.
bubble theory allows for that, which means that what he has talked about has now become a major scientific theory. And even though
Yep.
gravity was always considered a force and a wave because that's the way the theory of relativity allows for it to be both. Um, if I had to ask Bob Lazar one question, because all of this stuff jives to me, I don't have a problem believing that the United States tried to discredit him, erased his school records, changed
Yeah,
his
they're
high
threatening
school
to go out.
records, his birth certificate disappeared. I have no problem with that. The only thing that he said that I would love to ask him about, and I'm not a debunker, I'm just a regular person interested with questions, I'm not a scientist, I'm just an average Joe. But
Yeah, just like all of them.
he said that all the components worked without any wires, which we know all of our stuff's doing that now, right? I'm talking to
Yep.
you on a phone. I'm in Oklahoma, you're in
Well,
Kentucky. There's no wires connected to either of our stuff, and I'm using a
nope,
Bluetooth
and right
speaker.
here, yeah, and
But
I'm using Bluetooth. Go ahead.
once he said that it was had a base and then like a pole coming up at like an angle, and then you set a dome on top. And once that dome was on top, it created an anti-gravity field and you couldn't touch it. And
Yep.
I want to know, how do you turn it off? If that's how you turn it on, and then once it's on you can't touch it, how do you turn it off? But he did say
Well,
on Joe Rogan that there were several different ways you could turn it on and off. And that would be my question. If I had one question. If you had one question, what would you ask?
well, and I can help answer that question a little bit, and I have a totally different question for you. But when he in this show, he specifically said he was kept in one zone of the ship. There was multiple layers of the ship, and he was in the zone where they showed the top part of the generator or of the gravity machine. And then he could work underneath that where the barrels were that were moving 180 degrees. And he knew about the pole that went up the middle. The next layer up, he never really got to go to. The top layer, he said he thought had something to do with the transportation systems, onboard systems that actually system where it was at in space and control everything. So he didn't get to see a control room or basically what we would call a cockpit where they would turn things on and turn things off. When he was talking about that being on, the top part of the dome, the top part that generated the gravity field before it goes out the metal pole antenna to the top part of the dome of the craft. He said you couldn't put your hands on it. No matter how hard you pushed, there was an invisible force there, like a magnet, like you said, two magnets, and you couldn't put them together. He said that fascinated him. But that was just in that one area around the device, not walking away from it in other parts of that ship. So I'm sure in another section they had controls that started.
I
And you can
think
basically room for the take a barrel so the ship could go and whatever.
I
But
I think that my understanding of it when he was talking about, because I was watching the Joe Rogan um, interview, and he was talking about how Barry, his lab partner, couldn't wait to show him what they were working with. And it was my understanding that they were in the lab and the pieces were right there, because he only went in the ship once, I think. That's not where they were working.
well, I'm not for sure about how they would turn that on and off the lab, but I know when he when he was on the ship, the stuff that he'd seen on the ship, working on the ship, was very compartmentalized, and they only had certain sections they were allowed to look at and figure out as a reverse engineer. They weren't getting to see the whole picture. They weren't getting to see
Right.
from
Which
beginning to
is
end
very hard to make. It's hard to make progress on when things are that compartmentalized.
Yeah, well, I think the other fascinating part of this is that leads, you know, validity to all this is how many times the FBI has raided his house, you know, in recent times. Now he has a company and they do a lot of business with things with chemistry and metal. You can almost call him an alchemist, you know, where they, you know, experiment with making different things. That's what he does. But as they were doing this documentary for Netflix, people asked him because back in his original statement, he said he got out a piece of that 115. He said he got some, I guess, in and around somewhere that he got a little piece of it out. And then this new
Yeah,
documentary,
I actually have a little information on that. They had sent a sample of element 115 over to the Los Alamos lab to have it tested, and it was called, there was a code name for it. I can't remember what it was right now.
It's like LGB 7000 or something, or 1000. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so they told them it was an advanced armor, and they figured out how it was layered and everything. But supposedly, if he did have a piece of element 115, it didn't come out of Area 51, Section S4. It came out of Los Alamos from one of his, maybe someone he worked with before.
I don't know. The government took this really seriously because as they were making the documentary,
he got raided.
The documentary asking the question and he wouldn't answer. The next day, the FBI, ATF, every department, hazmat, safely show up. They say they're looking for a form because he sent somebody. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, they're looking for thallium. His cell of thallium.
Yeah, the crazy reason for asking people to be there was because of an invoice in a form because they thought he might be sending hazardous material. So
and he gave them the paperwork that they asked for, and they still searched the entire lab, cordoned it off in squares, looking for something. They were not there for email records and sales records.
They had X-ray devices. They were looking underneath the concrete and the wall, every square foot of that building. And if you think about the amount of money spent, the different agencies there to serve that warrant to do what they did to him would have cost $150,000 worth of people and employees to do that. Crazy. And then, like 2 days later, I guess another conversation happened, and they came back and raided him again. So there has to be something to this story. There wouldn't be that much pressure from the government. You know, even
oh, you're cutting out.
Yeah, no, I'm watching Netflix. Go ahead.
Oh, before we go further, I want to thank G-Kid for the beat that I'm using for the background in this video. So thank you, G-Kid.
Shout out G-Kid.
Yeah, super nice kid, super great rapper, and made this beat for me for free. And now I'm.
That's really cool. I think he's an awesome kid.
Oh, I lost my train of thought. Might have to flip over to my.
I think he's a really good artist. I really enjoy doing reactions to his music. He's got a really cool style. I really enjoy it.
Okay.
But yeah, even how Pablo Star in this documentary thing shows how they made elements, how element what most of these manufacturers, how it's basically little discs fused together into like a cylinder, and then that stays out into a cone. And then a cone slides into individual pieces. Even all that, man, if you go back and look back 4,000 years ago, when the people, Sumerians, whoever came here, if you look at all their rock art, they got always got a cone, device in their hands, and that's supposed to be a symbol of their power, where the power comes from. I think we have a big problem with thinking about technology, and I think we all think it has to look like a car, or has to look like a big machine. But if you get into the future, technology can be something that would look like a rock in somebody's hand that might have some kind of a gravity generator inside of it to move blocks around and build pyramids. It just makes you think.
Yeah, we can throw as many ideas out that are total speculation based on, the same way debunkers can't. You know what I mean? The debunkers just drive me crazy. So, one of the things that brought Bob Lazar to my attention is the Lou Elizondo and David Fravor, Commander David Fravor. When those, and then the accompanying films that were released that were verified by the Pentagon.
Dude, that is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
And I'm not sure if I put them in this slide.
And I think some of that new stuff they've been releasing is showing us has been fascinating. I think it's just a trickle. I think it's just the beginning of a big process of information that they report on. In the stimulus package, this last stimulus package, our government was told they have to put all the UFO information and disclose it in a package. And supposedly 2 or 3 weeks from now, that package is going to be delivered to Congress. So there might be a whole lot more stuff coming soon.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what the government has to say. I think they have till the end of June. I know it's in June. I don't know what date. I know they gave them 180 days. But yeah, this.
I know that my only part that I worry about is so far what I've been hearing over and over and over is UFOs are real, the technology is serious, we need plenty of money for our defense, and they're bad and evil. And that's the signal I don't like. I don't like being told all that. We need to be afraid of these things because I just don't see that. I don't see the need to be fear mongering, if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I don't see the need for that either, and I really haven't heard that much of. It's been more subtle what I've heard, with it, that it could be a defense threat or whatever, and it is. If anything that has better technology than you and is coming into your space is a threat. As that's just how it is, but they have been coming for a long time, in my opinion, and they haven't done any mass destruction as far as I can tell. They may study some, and I think there might be more than one race, interdimensional. We'll get into what we think could be going on in another episode.
The Canadian defense minister, who was the defense Minister of Canada for 20 years, the day he retires, goes to his local TV station, who discloses a lot of that. It talks about that he knew for sure for fact there were 3 different types of alien entities, and there could be as many as 12. But since then, other people have said that there is at least as many as 12. But that's all still at a theory stage at this point, too, because nobody's verified any of that kind of stuff. But, and you're right, they could be interstellar travelers, they could be interdimensional travelers, and there could be a lot of different places. All that could be coming from the future. It's really wild.
Right. So the very credible 4 pilots, the radar, the flare image, all that, the Tic Tac one moves exactly the way Bob Lazar described being able to move.
Yeah. Exactly the same way. And he knew that 30 years before.
Yeah, 30 years.
It's a long time if you think about it.
So far, the only part of his story that has not been verified is his schooling. And I have no trouble, because when Lou Elizondo come out, they tried to say he'd never worked there. Are you there, Shannon?
Yeah, and I think we'll get. Yeah, and
so it's showing the same practices 30 years later. Discredit the person who's the whistleblower, right?
Exactly. And, now the 30 years has gone by, you could get up enough information to discredit when he was in high school. You could discredit where he lived and grew up, because there's so much time passed. You could find the right things to prove whatever he wanted to try to prove. You could really discredit that he even exists right now as a person.
His birth certificate did disappear.
Yep, exactly right. That's what I'm saying. Who's to say tomorrow somebody won't go and go over and say, I found out about these cars and aliens. That's why he has no birth certificate, and that's how he knows all this stuff. I mean, that's not outside the craziness of these debunkers and what they're willing to do to clear his name.
Oh my gosh. I have a great debunker for you. His name is Dr. Grande, and I think he's a psychologist. Because
doctor, I love how all these debunkers gotta have that big old doctor in front of their name before they can start talking the crap.
Yes. And so what he had to, I want to play you a clip. Hold on just a second. I hope I have.
Not only the window of their aircraft, but also through their helmets. Many opportunities for reflections and distortions. Both occurred over the ocean. Why would aliens or a foreign government be interested in the oceans? Is the planet Earth like SeaWorld for aliens? They only come here to see aquatic life. Both occurred after radar upgrades were made to the aircraft and surface vessels. It's also worth noting that some of the encounters between Navy pilots and UFOs were only recorded on radar and/or infrared. The pilots did not see the objects visually. I'm not talking about the aviators I've discussed here, but other aviators on radar or infrared. Pilots are taught to trust their instruments, so it makes sense that they would have a lot of faith in the accuracy of radar and infrared. The majority of the sightings can be explained without requiring aliens, or for that matter, without requiring aircraft from foreign countries. Most sightings have fairly mundane explanations. Civil aircraft, military aircraft, drones, blimps, weather balloons, kites, windborne debris, birds, stars, planets, meteors, satellites, re-entering space debris, clouds, instrumentation failure, like malfunctioning radar, light reflections, and optical illusions. People often think of vision as supplying an exact representation of one's.
If we're still recording, I'm just going to say this, as far as doctrine goes in today's world, I think we're all kind of learning about colleges what kind of a systematic indoctrination it is, especially when you go 8 to 12 years. So once you've went that long and you're established in a certain education, and that's what you've been taught with, if you're ever presented anything outside of what you're taught and what you're supposed to know, these guys, instead of having open minds and being willing to look at it, say, nope, 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 it don't exist. And I don't care if they got the flu right in front of their face, they'll still say it doesn't exist.
I must just have it on my phone. Because...
But I do know.
Oh, wait, hold on just a second. Dr. Todd Grande. I do have links.
Sure.
But he said, first, when it was just Commander Fravor, he said, even pilots can make mistakes. They're looking through a helmet and they're looking through a curved glass. It could be an optical illusion. And,
optical illusion, that goes all the way back to my term paper.
Right, but optical illusions do not show up on radar.
Yeah, but that's what
so you had to have a failure of the radar that told them something was there when there was nothing there. And then when they got to that location, there accidentally was a lens flare that made them think that they saw something there. And it was 4 people saw the same lens flare, and or weather balloon or commercial plane or another. It's ridiculous.
Everything you just said is like the bunker. It's like going to the bunker 101 at college. Here's the bunker 101. First it's swamp gas, then it's an optical illusion, then it's a lens flare, then it's an airplane or a bird or an insect. I mean, just everything. It's the same. It's like they're taught the same things to say over and over and over and over. It's so ridiculous. They don't have a pot to stand on. They're going to go against the narrative of whatever's being said, and they're going to say the dumbest things and make everybody believe that, it's swamp gas with the reflection from the sun and a lens flare, and that's what you're saying. They've been saying those same stories. Even back to the case that you brought up when you were talking on the phone, back to that first case of the abduction.
Betty and Barney Hill.
The names of them.
Betty and Barney Hill.
The one that went under hypnosis. Yes, that's exactly right.
Oh. Hey, Shannon. I'm starting to lose you again. So maybe we should pause. I said I'm starting to lose you. You're going in and out. So do you want to pause and go try again tomorrow for another part 2?
Or we can find it there and so you can come get this rest. I mean, I hope everybody had a great day out there, and I hope everybody's enjoying what we're talking about. And if they have enjoyed what we're talking about, we're definitely going to have a part 2, part 3. Hopefully many more parts to come. So I hope everybody has a good day out there. And I think this will be a good time. I don't know how long we've been going. How long has it been? About an hour so far?
Yeah, almost an hour.
So if we want to leave it here and tell people to leave comments, questions, if they have suggestions about other things to talk about, other topics, or to add to this one, they have their own personal stories for us to talk about, and maybe you can read and we can discuss. And they have their own personal experiences, UFOs, whatever. If it's a scary, unexplained, mysterious type of thing, if you've got something to tell us out there, leave the comment, and we'll definitely talk about it and see what we think about it.
That's the whole purpose of this podcast. Share the scare.
Yeah. Share the scare. You're right.
I'm not particularly afraid of UFOs, but I've never been abducted and I've never seen one. I might get a totally different feeling if that ever happened to me. But I do find it quite scary that there are things coming into our airspace that can, that we can't meet on an even playing field.
Part of all of it is the unknown factor. That's
Yeah.
the mysterious part. The mysterious part can either tingle your brain, in an interest way, or it can tingle your brain in a scare way. Either way, when it's unexplained and you don't know the knowledge, you can't figure it out. It does, however it is, it's a little scary. I mean, think about it. If we were home, if all of a sudden this little light flew into our home, we're around our home, didn't do anything to us, it just flew out. We would be freaked out. We'd be scared to death. We'd be, what do I got to do to make sure I can't go get back in, even though it didn't do anything to us? I mean, that's just normal human reactions and stuff, especially when it's outside what we know to be true. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, speaking of debunkers, I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he said, why would aliens want to come and look at us? I'm like, are you kidding? You know, we've spent time studying inferior creatures our whole existence. Why wouldn't they?
Why do we have guys going to become doctors to go to the Amazon forest to study spiders if somebody else wouldn't want to study us? Come on.
Right. I mean, I think of Jane Goodall and her work with the gorillas. You know, Gorillas in the Mist, and how great that was. You know, and
we have people studying ants that live and breathe daily, watching ants nonstop, to learn and know every behavior of ants. So if we have people that are being paid to do that, why wouldn't somebody above us want to do it? We're just got to think about this in dimensions.
oh, our own government does studies us.
Yes, exactly right. That's exactly right.
You know,
and
if you came from a place that was so technologically advanced that there were no violence, like I think that this imagining this, you know, what if you lived on a planet where you were mobile like a person, but the way you fed was through sunlight, like plants, right? So you didn't have to kill what to eat, because everything on Earth has to kill something to eat, whether it's a plant or an animal, right?
That's exactly right.
What if you came from a planet that didn't have that? Would you not find this place horrific? And don't people love to look at a train wreck?
Yep, and study it and understand it.
Yes.
Figure out why they're doing that.
And are we not the biggest freaking train wreck right now? I mean,
the whole world is.
Yes, that's what I mean.
My friend Reese, with medical science and KTV in London, they're still basically been locked down for a year, and now they're talking about re-locking them down, even after they've had vaccination. So our whole world is really upside down right now. There's no two societies that are the same, and remember making everybody hate each other. You know, if you look at the cycles of life and the cycles of our history, it's like they're trying to lead the world into another world war with all the hate and the divisions and all that stuff. And I'm afraid food's going to be that problem. I see food shortages here in Lexington. I know there's big concrete shortages in the world, and that's the one big problem that people aren't really understanding about this lockdown. Is how many food productions have been shut down, and how many people are going to really be starving in this next year. So,
yeah, especially with inflation going up. My husband has been building me a deck for a month, and working by himself after work or whatever. And every time he goes to the lumber store, it's higher and higher. It was actually high. It was cheaper to buy 2x6s than it was to buy 2x4s.
Yep, and it's going to be to the point. I know, like I was listening to the deck, and that's awful. Not that your husband do that for you. It's really cool. But just like when he's going through, the prices have went up 1,000% in just the last month. And they're going to make it to where, and they make these boards called composite boards. They're actually made out of plastic. They're like they look like wood, but they're actually boards. They're like made out of oil, how everything else is. But those are pretty expensive boards, and now they're going to be cheaper than the regular wood. Think about how crazy that is.
Mm-hmm.
And they want us to start eating 2 days a week now. If the gates and the big companies of the world had their way right now, we'd be eating 2 days a week everything. It's anything real. So it's been really weird,
Okay.
battle with.
Yeah. Well, I think that we're going to sign off and maybe come back and talk about some theories. I have some theories about cycles on Earth and past civilizations being lost and past technologies being lost. I know it's a common one.
I'm definitely very interested in that big time. I think just to leave it to the listeners out there something to think about as far as lost technology.
So maybe we can do this again next week.
Yeah,
or
that sounds great.
2 weeks.
Whatever you're free.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right, well, everybody, if you've got a comment or a story, please share it. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day out there.
Thank you, Shannon. You have a wonderful day too, and I will talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. So this has been Lady Shar with the Real McCoy Reacts. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you again, G Kid, for this beat. Next time will be tinfoil time, so that we can discuss some of our theories. And if you have any stories, UFO related, cryptid, hauntings, exorcisms, anything unexplained or scary, mysterious, I am here for you. I will listen to it all. And if you have a rant, tell me about it too. Yeah, just tell me about it. Are you a Karen? Do you know a Karen? Do you fucking hate people that use the name Karen as a description for a bunch of unflattering personality traits? Well, tell me about it. Are you a flat earther that can't even get your brother to listen to your theories? Tell me about it. Do you have a brother that's a flat earther that you would like to rant about? Tell me about it. But for real, if y'all have a ghost story, a near-death experience, out-of-body experience, anything mysterious, strange, unexplained, creepy, scary, all of that. Y'all, I have a haunted doll story that is my own story coming up for you soon. And I also have a true crime story. It's still an open case. It involves cannibalism, and it will be coming out soon also. Email me, SHAReTheScare with a Y at gmail.com, and let me know what you're thinking. Let me know your stories, or your parents' stories, or your cousin's stories. Don't have to be yours, but if you have a good campfire story, bring it on. All right, guys, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you again, G Kid, for the beat, and I'll catch you next time. Peace. I'm out.